What if I told you that one of the most trusted tools in your dev stack, a simple, routine software update, was actually a weapon? A weapon designed by a foreign intelligence service to steal the keys to your entire digital kingdom? Well, this isn't some movie plot. This is exactly what happened in 2020. We're talking about an estimated 18,000 organizations, including the US Treasury, Homeland Security, Microsoft, Intel, you name it. They all installed a backdoor through a digitally signed update for a tool called SolarWinds Orion. And this wasn't just some smash-and-grab hack. No, this was a masterpiece of espionage. So let's break down exactly how they pulled it off, and more importantly, what it means for us, the people who actually build and ship software. To really get this, you have to think about it chronologically. This wasn't some quick hit. It was a patient, methodical takeover of the one place nobody was really watching, the software factory itself. Just look at this timeline. It's wild. The attackers, a Russian group known as APT-19, first got into SolarWinds network way back in September of 2019. They waited 5 months before even deploying their malware, and the world didn't find out until December of 2020. That's a dwell time, the time they were inside undetected, of over 14 months. They had all the time in the world to be slow, careful, and precise. Now, this is what we call a software supply chain attack. And it's brilliant in a terrifying way. Why bother trying to hack 18,000 different well-defended organizations? That's way too much work. Instead, APT-29 realized they only needed to hack one, SolarWinds. They poisoned the well, knowing that every single customer would eventually come to take a drink. It is an incredibly efficient way to attack at a massive scale. So how on earth did they do this without anyone at SolarWinds noticing? Well, they used a very specific tool called SUNSPOT. Think of your CI/CD pipeline like a factory, a printer factory. SUNSPOT was like a rogue worker hiding inside that factory. It just sat there patiently watching the assembly line for one specific product, the Orion platform. Right at the last possible second before the official build server, which was actually Microsoft's own mbuild.exe, compiled the code, SUNSPOT jumped in. It quickly swapped a clean source file with its own malicious version. The build server, none the wiser, compiled the malicious code, digitally signed it, and packaged it up. And then, and this is the genius part, SUNSPOT swapped the clean file right back, leaving absolutely no trace in the source code repository. It was pristine. So the thing that came out of that compromised factory was the weapon itself, the SUNBURST backdoor. And really, its genius wasn't about what it did, but its incredible, almost unbelievable ability to hide in plain sight. Seriously, SUNBURST was a masterclass in staying hidden. First, once it was installed, it did absolutely nothing for up to 2 weeks. It just played possum. This is designed to get past automated security sandboxes that only watch new software for a few minutes or hours. Second, it checked for a whole list of security tools, stuff from FireEye, CrowdStrike, the big names. If it found any, it just went back to sleep. And third, and this is so clever, it checked the computer's domain name. If it looked like it was running inside SolarWinds' own network, it would just shut itself down. This means it would never get caught by their own QA teams. All right, so once it finally decided it was safe to wake up, SUNBURST needed to phone home to its command and control server, the C2. The problem is, any weird network traffic is going to get flagged by a firewall almost instantly. So how do you communicate when you know someone is watching? You use DNS. Now, this is probably the single cleverest part of the entire attack. SUNBURST didn't send out normal data packets. Instead, it encoded information about the victim, like a unique ID and what security tools were running, into the subdomain of a DNS query. It would then send this query out to a domain the attackers controlled. So the attackers could learn everything they needed to know just by watching their own DNS server logs, without ever sending a single packet back to the victim. To a firewall, this is basically invisible. It just looks like a completely normal, harmless DNS lookup. Okay, so out of those 18,000 infected organizations, the attackers were really only interested in maybe 100 high-value targets. And for that small group, they rolled out a second stage. This was the real goal, getting complete, persistent access to the victim's entire cloud environment. They did this with a technique called a Golden SAML attack. Now, as developers, we all get how stuff like OAuth works, right? Well, a Golden SAML attack is basically like stealing the master private key from the identity provider itself. Once the attackers got that key from a victim's on-prem servers, they could forge their own SAML tokens, their own login tickets, for literally any user they wanted, all the way up to a global admin. Then they could just show up at a cloud service like Azure AD or Microsoft 365 with this forged ticket, and because it's signed with the real key, they get let right in. It completely, totally bypasses multi-factor authentication. It's like having a skeleton key that can open any door for any person in the entire cloud kingdom. So with all this unbelievable sophistication, how did this thing finally get caught? You might think it was some advanced AI security tool, right? Nope. It all came down to a single alert, a little bit of luck, and some really good old-fashioned human curiosity. An employee at the cybersecurity firm FireEye, who was one of the victims, got an alert that a new device had been registered to their account for MFA. Now, let's be honest, this is the kind of alert that most people, even most security teams, might just ignore. But this person didn't. They dug in. And that one little thread they pulled on is what unraveled the entire global campaign. The discovery was, for all practical purposes, a complete accident. And once it was unraveled, the fallout was just immense. I mean, the victim list reads like a who's who of the US government and the tech industry. Treasury, Homeland Security, Department of Defense, tech giants like Microsoft, Intel, Cisco. The attackers got into the email systems of senior government officials. They even stole source code from Microsoft. The scale of it was just staggering. The government's response was incredibly fast and sweeping. You had Executive Order 14028, which completely rewrote the rules for software supply chain security for anyone selling to the federal government. New laws were passed that required companies to report incidents like this. And the SEC even brought charges against SolarWinds and its CISO, which set a huge new precedent for corporate liability. This wasn't just a tech screw-up, it created a legal and regulatory shockwave that we are all still feeling today. Okay. So that's the story. What does it all mean for us right now, sitting here today? Let's take the attacker's playbook and flip it into our own defensive action plan. First thing, and this is the big one, the attackers didn't go after production. They went after the factory. Your CI/CD system, your build servers, your code repos, your artifact storage, that is a tier 0 asset. You have to treat it like the crown jewels and protect it with the same level of paranoia you apply to your production environment. Second lesson, remember that malicious SUNBURST file was perfectly signed with a legit SolarWinds certificate. This is so important. Code signing only proves who signed something, not that the code inside is safe. If the signing process itself gets compromised, that signature actually becomes a weapon against you. Third, and this is about mindset, prevention is eventually going to fail. AP29 was successful because they plan on getting in and staying in for a long time. We have to adopt that same assume breach mentality. It means we have to invest just as much energy in detecting that slow, quiet, long-term activity as we do in building bigger firewalls. Fourth lesson, SUNBURST got its foothold through a network monitoring tool that had a ton of privileges. We have to apply zero trust principles to every single vendor tool we install, especially the ones that ask for God mode admin rights. The second you install it, their third-party risk becomes your first-party risk. It's your problem now. Number 5. Remember how SUNBURST hid its communications in DNS traffic? They got away with it for months because almost nobody logs and analyzes their outgoing DNS queries. Those logs are an absolute security goldmine. You have to start looking at them for weird patterns that could signal these kinds of covert channels. And finally, Lesson 6. The endgame was that Golden SAML attack against the cloud identity provider. That move bypasses almost all of your traditional network security. Your Azure AD, your Okta instance, that is the new battlefield, and it needs its own dedicated defenses. Okay, let's make this super practical. I want you to think about doing 3 things this week. First, generate an SBOM, a software bill of materials for your main app. You need to know exactly what's in the sausage. Second, go enforce MFA on every single account that can touch your build pipeline. No exceptions. And third, go talk to your network team about turning on full DNS query logging. It's a simple change, but it could be the one thing that catches the next big attack. So, I'll leave you with this question to think about. The bad guys were inside SolarWinds for over a year, completely undetected. So, how would you know if a trusted vendor has already compromised your built pipeline right now?